Welcome back and good morning again. This is Brighter Morning with Bo. My name is Bo Tiwari, and my first guest this morning is Mr. Nigel Baptiste, and we want to welcome Mr. Baptiste to the program. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Bo. Good morning to all of your viewers.
Okay, could we lift the volume a little bit so people can hear him more clearly? It's good to have you on the program, and I want to start by asking you this question. When you hear numbers like 1,696 people dead in a country of 1.4 million in Trinidad and Tobago, when you hear 5.45, because I saw the news this morning with the numbers, 5.45 million people dead worldwide, and when you hear that we only have 600,000 people in Trinidad and Tobago fully vaccinated, what are your thoughts and feelings?
Well, Bo, I think my thoughts and feelings are broken into two components. One is to try and understand how much of the deaths were unnecessary. And that really ties back to how many of the deaths took place after the vaccines became available and after people had a chance to vaccinate themselves, and so therefore maybe avoided such a unfortunate outcome. I think that's one aspect of my feeling. I think overall it's quite tragic. I've always said that this COVID pandemic is a medical and a health issue first, and then it becomes an economic or a livelihood sort of an issue. And so those numbers uh, generate very, very sad feelings for me. I think the numbers in Trinidad in particular, and if we focus in on the vaccination level, are disappointing because we see every day now 10, 15, 12 individuals dying, and you see how many additional cases, how many people going into the ICU unit. And now we are seeing the statistic of the percentage of them that are unvaccinated. And that is very tragic, I think, as well. Very, very tragic.
Yeah, I think the situation becomes even more dramatic and sadder, more sad, when we realize that there are many, many countries in the world. Right now, in the G20 summit and in the COP26 conference, one of the big issues has been the vaccine divide. And the industrialized countries have agreed to send basically plane loads of vaccinations to countries. Now, there are countries that have not even vaccinated 1% of their people. Some have not vaccinated more than 2%, maybe 3% of their people. And all of these countries that are in that position are in that position because they do not have the vaccines. In other words, they don't have the option of getting a vaccine. In Trinidad and Tobago, we had that problem for a little while, but eventually the government was able to provide vaccines from various sources through purchase and donations to make it available. Now we have a vaccination availability count of over 1 million doses, given those that have been given already and what we can potentially give. Do you think that, are we missing something here with those people who are vaccine hesitant?
But I don't know what we are missing, right? I think I agree with your view. We have an operation, as you know, in Ghana, and Ghana's challenge is vaccine availability so far. I mean, you don't know when you're going to encounter the vaccine hesitancy until you have all of the vaccines available.
That's right.
I follow the debate, and I think if I was in one of the developed countries, I certainly would want to include an additional criteria in terms of determining how I allocate the vaccines to try and understand the level of vaccine hesitancy in the various countries. Because there's no point sending vaccines to countries and these countries end up not being able to deploy the vaccines properly, you know? And so, I mean, that's a consideration. With respect to missing something, I think if I had a recommendation to the Ministry of Health, I believe we should also start breaking down the deaths number in terms of the pre and post vaccine availability. So the country could really understand what has taken place after the vaccines have become available. We at Republic Bank, as you know, we are in the news a little bit, right, for two things. One, we are really trying to thank the public of Trinidad and Tobago for making that choice to become vaccinated. And that's the 600,000 plus who have made that choice to be vaccinated. I think we need to be grateful for that number. As you said at the beginning, we are in a slightly fortunate position compared to other countries, even in the Caribbean. We do have a higher level of vaccinated public, however low it is. We are still higher than
Yes.
many of our Caribbean counterparts. Okay, but it still is not good enough in any of these countries. But we, Republic Bank, is quite grateful for that. And so this whole vaccination campaign, and we've done many things along that line, have been to show our gratitude for the for the commitment by the individuals who have their own doubts to still go and be vaccinated. On the other hand, internal to Republic Bank, we've also had a bit of a challenge in terms of getting our staff vaccinated. And so, I mean, we are there. There's a matter which is going to go in front of the industrial court eventually, and that matter will be decided by the industrial court. So I don't want to kind of debate it too much.
Yes.
But we do have various staff members who have a number of reasons for not being vaccinated. And if we are missing anything, is really trying to understand as clearly as possible, so we could explain why some of the concerns maybe are not should be maybe diminished to some extent. But the bank and I think the country has been trying to understand the reason for the hesitancy and trying to address those reasons. But there is a very strong core anti-vaccination sentiment, I think, in the country generally and in most countries.
Okay, well, let's explore those two things that you mentioned in relation to Republic Bank in particular. First of all, you are providing an incentive and a reward for people who have been vaccinated. And basically the idea is, first of all, to reward those who have been vaccinated and in a sense to induce an interest in other people to become vaccinated. Why did you feel that that was a good thing to do for Republic Bank? And what is the corporate sense of duty or obligation or social responsibility that drives that?
I think from the minute this COVID pandemic came on, Republic Bank was looking to see how we could help our clients. And so during the entire early days, when there was no vaccine and everyone was trying their best, and I know the medical professionals were working very, very, very hard to identify a vaccine, we went the route, as most of the other banks in Trinidad, and I think most of the banks in the world, we went the route of seeing what kind of concessions could be made, interest rate reductions, fee waivers, all the things that were within the control of the bank. So we were doing those things. The minute the vaccines became available, and there was, as you said, initially the difficulty in Trinidad sourcing it, Republic Bank, along with some of our colleagues in the banking sector, we were prepared to assist in the sourcing of the vaccines because we saw the vaccines as being a route to the country returning to normalcy. And we continue to see that. When the vaccines started to flow into the country, Republic Bank embarked upon a campaign to actually encourage people to become vaccinated. I mean, people may not recall, but we probably were one of the early organizations that had this, what we call, what's your one reason for being vaccinated? So we started a campaign to encourage people to go out there and be vaccinated. And as you might recall, it commenced with people in certain categories being eligible for the vaccine until more and more vaccines became available. So we started off with that campaign. Then we continued in partnership with First Citizens. First Citizens ourselves, we assisted in the public vaccination efforts that took place at the Diwali Naga site. In terms of financing that activity to make it free to the public to go to those sites. And so this vaccination lottery is just a continuation, really, of Republic Bank trying to encourage and make it more and more convenient for the public in Trinidad and Tobago to become vaccinated. And the corporate purpose is, I think, obvious. We need a higher level of vaccination among our public in order for the country to return to some degree of normalcy. And the bank, which is a second derivative kind of beneficiary of the economic development of the country, we need the country to begin to return to normalcy, to have any chance of moving forward.
Yes.
I think in your intro you were talking about some of the other challenges that are coming.
That are
We
emerging,
have
yes.
the taxation, etc. There are so many challenges coming down the road for small countries such as Trinidad and Tobago. Having a COVID pandemic still milling around there because you have relatively low levels of vaccination, is just one more thing that we could do without.
Okay, I'll just give you a brief opportunity to talk about the vaccine lottery that you've created and how it works before I go on to what is happening inside Republic Bank with regard to this COVID management issue.
Okay.
So the way the lottery... All right, I'll give you a chance to say it then. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so both the lottery is very straightforward. You
Yes.
go online and you enter, and it's not the Republic Bank customer something. It's anybody in Trinidad and Tobago. You go online and you enter, and every week you have a chance to win 5,000. And all you have to do is put in some details on yourself. You don't have to give us, you don't have to upload any vaccination certificate. None of those things are required. You just enter your name. If you were one of the winners, then clearly you would have to then produce proof that you are vaccinated. But up to that, you just really enter, right? Contact details, email, telephone number, and every week someone has a chance to win $5,000. I mean, we've had about 7 winners so far, and probably an 8th winner. I don't have that person's name, but up to the middle of last week when they gave me the information, we had about 7 winners for the 7 weeks that had passed. And all these names then go forward, right? The 7 winners and everybody else who didn't win a weekly prize go forward to when we have the draw for the vehicles in December. So it's just straightforward. You go online and you enter your name and you don't have to do anything else.
Okay, so for the person who is watching or listening, if you are vaccinated, you fill out the form, you enter, you have a chance of getting $5,000. And after that, you have a big opportunity at the end of the year to win actually a motor vehicle, a motor car.
Yeah, a Grand Vitara.
Okay, very good. So let's go to the bank itself now. You mentioned the industrial court matter with the union. I wouldn't probe that. But clearly, Republic Bank took some early initiatives, just as it was trying to get the country to accept the fact that we have to be vaccinated in order to have a thriving economy. You took the decision in the bank very early to make the bank a safe zone. And the way you did that was that basically you were asking all your employees to either get vaccinated or take a test within reasonable periods to ensure that they did not have symptoms or infections, and therefore it could not spread in the bank. Now that seems to me a reasonable policy. What is the problem?
Well, well, I guess that's a question, right, to ask the members who have not been vaccinated or who have been a difficulty in taking the vaccine. I mean, realistically speaking, the cost of the PCR test in Trinidad is quite high. I mean, why that cost is so high in Trinidad also kind of befuddles me, because when you look at the cost of it in many other countries, it is considerably lower, right? But in Trinidad, we have a very high cost for that PCR test, and I think that's something for people to outside of my maybe area of expertise to explore and try to understand. But the main issue is not so much the PCR test. The main issue is why people are not seeing the need to be vaccinated. And I'll tell you, Bo, in the bank itself, as of last week, we had 90% of our staff fully vaccinated. Or at least one dose. I think probably about 80-something% fully vaccinated and maybe the other 6 or 7% with one dose. So we have been quite successful in our staff taking the responsibility to be vaccinated. But that still leaves around 300 other individuals who have not been vaccinated as yet. And those are the individuals being affected by the requirement for PCR test. And why the difficulty? Obviously, there's a cost issue for those individuals. People do have a belief that it is their right to not be to choose whether to be vaccinated or not, and it's also their right to choose whether to do a PCR test or not. So I think that there's a rights issue there. I mean, the organization believes that we have a responsibility to everyone inside of the organization as well as to our clients who are visiting the organization, that we don't present a risk to them. We're not quite a safe zone per se, because it is not to say that people who are visiting the organization also need to be vaccinated. But we have reasoned that if we keep the length of time that anyone who is visiting the bank to do business to a minimum, then the risk of one of our staff members, and our experience has been that none of our staff members have actually been infected by any customer of the bank. So we have not had that experience to date. And I hope we don't have that experience. Our experience has been that where we have had staff who have become COVID positive, more often than not, if they were to get it from inside the bank, it really was from a colleague.
Yeah, but your protocols for customers are also very strong. I mean, you have to wear a mask.
Our protocols for customers are not so strong, but our protocols for any service suppliers are very strong. Okay. Anyone coming into the organization providing a service. So we're talking about the security guards. We're talking about those people who assist us in terms of cleaning services. Anyone who does any kind of maintenance work on our buildings, where those people are likely to be in the on our property for more than 15 or 30 minutes. Those people also have to be fully vaccinated. Yeah, but the average customer coming in to do a transaction at the teller, those people we are not requiring that they be vaccinated.
That is true, but they have to wear a mask, they have to wash or sanitize, and those things are pretty meticulously observed.
And so we have the 6 feet. We have the 6 feet as well. For customers. So yes, all of those things are in place.
Okay. Now, many people might know that Republic is a Trinidad and Tobago based bank with headquarters in Trinidad and Tobago, and that is throughout the Caribbean. But you really are a Caribbean bank that has stretched globally. I want to ask you a little bit about that. We're going to have to take a break now, but I'm alerting you that we are going to go there when you come back. Okay?
Sure.
Let's take a break, and we'll come back in less than 30 seconds.
Welcome to Lifetime Solutions, where you can trust your roof to us. Our services include custom fabrication, steel framing, roofing installation, on-site roll forming, roofing maintenance and services. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today, or visit our website www.lifetimesolutions.tt.com. Lifetime Solutions. You can trust your roof to us. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today, or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com.
You did the right thing. So now we're giving you things. Republic Bank thanks you and wants to reward you for getting vaxxed. Win $5,000 in prizes every week, plus 1 of 2 cars in December. You took care of your health, and now we're taking care of you. $5,000 and a chance to win a car. See press and log on to republictt.com for details.
Mangalese Trading Company Limited. Specialist in PVC ceiling, gypsum ceiling, suspended ceilings, medallions, lights, metal framings, and SPCS flooring, known as vinyl plank. Now introducing Mangalese Foods, wholesale and retail, distributor of the family brand food items. Our range of products include rice, sugar, chickpeas, split peas, and soybean oil. Mangalese Foods deliver exceptional products. We offer timely and efficient service. We are located at 9 Francis Lala Road, Charlieville, Chaguanas. Contact us at 672-9889, 740-5569, or 336-4373. Mangalese Trading Company Limited.
Welcome to the Value Optical Rock the Frame Festival Red Carpet, where we... Oh, wait. Renee, is that you?
Yes, darling. It is I.
Okay. What are you wearing today?
These are Vogue frames from VO, darling. Yes, boy, I get 15% off of these frames, and then I get an next 10% off the add-ons. Boy!
Book online or hurry down to rock your look at the Value Optical Rock the Frame Festival now. Value Optical, expert care for your eyes.
Welcome back. This is Brighter Morning with Bo, and I am Bo Tiwari. My guest this morning is Mr. Nigel Baptiste, President and CEO of Republic Financial Holdings and Managing Director of Republic Bank. Nigel, before we broke, I asked you the question, what's happening with your bank globally in terms of vaccination? You mentioned Ghana and the fact that you have a problem of available vaccines in Ghana. What about elsewhere where you are operating? How are you managing that?
Yeah, so basically what we are doing is trying to adopt a similar approach subject to the availability of the vaccines. You know, not all of the countries are in the fortunate position that Trinidad is in. So we have to be mindful of that. But basically we are tracking it. We are encouraging staff in all of our jurisdictions to become vaccinated, and we're getting a reasonable response across the region, and so we're quite happy with how it has been progressing.
Okay, in the you mentioned earlier that part of what you are doing is really to try and help your customers to be vaccinated. Because in doing so, you are making a contribution to the country and helping the country to get to a point where opening up and getting back to normal will be easier. You mentioned also that you tried, as the pandemic became severe and people had to close their business, they had economic problems and so on, that the bank was helpful in this area. Now, many businesses, especially small and medium enterprises, have claimed that they just can't reopen, that they've had to close businesses. And a lot of other businesses are having problems. What are some of the problems that you are seeing, and how is the bank helpful in this? I know that the government has a government guaranteed program done through First Citizens and then made available to the other banks with First Citizens signing off on it. How are those things going?
Okay, so the SME program, not strictly speaking, done through First Citizens. First Citizens is in fact the trustee for the security that the government has provided. It's actually being made available through 4 of the commercial banks, which is First Citizens, Republic, Scotia, and Royal Bank. So it's available through all 4 banks and really directly through all the 4 banks. The First Citizens sign off really and truly is just First Citizens is coordinating to ensure that there's no duplication across the banks, and they, as I said, are the trustees. I mean, that program, we are in the second phase of the program. The first phase of the program, I think, didn't achieve as much as it could have, primarily because there were some requirements which I felt were reasonable at the time. okay, for businesses to be eligible. And the requirements were people's compliance with their national insurance obligations and people's compliance with their corporate tax and or VAT obligations. So those requirements I felt were quite reasonable when they were being rolled out. It turned out to be a bit of a challenge for some companies to get proof of their compliance, and then of course some companies were just not compliant. So that was a basic challenge, and it did limit the extent to which the program could have been adopted by many SMEs. For this second phase, the banks and the government consulted the central bank also, and the view was that maybe, as important as those things were, that we don't make it as a precondition, but that we maybe make it as a condition to be satisfied along the way. And so that change is in fact just about being finalized. And so hopefully that will then make it a little bit easier for more SME businesses to access that program. Now, with respect to the question of many of them being unable to open, I do feel that we probably need to investigate it further. Part of it has to do with the fact that the economy itself is not fully back open. And so until the economy is fully back open, that's another reason for more individuals to be vaccinated. Until the economy is fully back open, some of these smaller enterprises, it really would not make sense for them to start back doing business. And that is a challenge. Okay, and that is why we are so keen that we get things back. The curfew hours need to be scaled back and eventually removed. I don't think the government will feel comfortable in doing that until they see the country having a higher and higher vaccination rate. But some of the small businesses do need the curfew hours to be relaxed in order for it to make sense. I mean, you talk about people having to move around, and you now have a situation where with the curfew commencing or ending at 5 a.m. in the morning, people who are moving from far distances to come to places like Port of Spain, it's a bit of a challenge because you can't leave your home before 5 o'clock.
Yes.
And if everybody leaves at 5 o'clock, what happens? So you have limitations right now, and so all of these things add up in a different way for different businesses, and we need to have all of those things relaxed. And this is why it is so very important that the vaccination level comes up. I mean, we are seeing the numbers with the ICU right now, and we are seeing the drama stories of the ICU, 1 bed, 6 beds. I mean, it would not have been that if we had more people vaccinated.
Yeah, it's very troubling. But I want to strengthen your perspective on this, which is that if we got large numbers of people fully vaccinated, that is likely to help the economy to open up further. Secondly, increased vaccination will also help with the government relaxing the curfew measures under the state of emergency. It could also help ultimately with the lifting of the state of emergency and the return to normal economic and commercial activity. And that would then give the system an opportunity to operate within a framework in which you could engage reasonably, let's say with bank and client, to really assess what needs to be done. And more people can be helped as your customers or as people come into the bank as customers, etc., to help the economy to get back to buoyancy. Am I correct in that?
You're quite correct, Ambo. And I think there's another aspect that people are not seeing, which is that the increased levels of vaccination also does something for the psychological confidence of individuals.
That's right.
To go back outside there and engage. So even the unvaccinated, and it's sadly ironic that the unvaccinated would say that they are taking steps to protect themselves by limiting how they move around. So they're not going here, they're not going there. They're making sure they protect themselves by the actions that they take. But those actions that they take are in fact contributing to the economy not being able to return to normal. And so therefore, in fact, contributing to them never being able to return to normal. So it's almost like a vicious cycle. So the more people who are vaccinated, and the more people who will feel comfortable in going back around, going out to the various stores, going to the restaurant, going into the savannah, right, and buying something on the strip there, going into various stores, without whether or not it's a safe zone. So there's a psychological aspect to being vaccinated that I don't think gets enough credit.
Yes.
Or enough value is placed on it.
No, I think that's important. I think the psychological condition and the psychological framework of freedom is affected by fear of being infected when you don't have enough people vaccinated. I'm going to close with one last question because we're going to have to break for the news, and it is this. Recently, the Prime Minister of Barbados raised some issues about banks in Barbados. And there's a general feeling, not only in Trinidad and Tobago and the region, but all over the world, that whatever the economic crisis, banks generally do well and they come out on top. And people feel that banks do not share enough of the burden or do not have enough of a sense of social responsibility to work with an economy or work with a society or work with their customers or work with people to make things reasonable and ultimately better with a shared burden across the board, so to speak. How do you respond to those kinds of feelings? Because the purpose of a bank, like any business, is to make a profit. And you are ultimately accountable to your shareholders. Yet at the same time, you are a corporate entity in a society that must respond to the problems in a society. How do you manage this?
So, but that will take more than the 2 or 3 minutes that we have, right? So I'll tell you, if you ever want me to come back on your program and just talk about this issue, I will make myself available once we coordinate the times.
Well, I'm glad you said that. We will do that, but I'll give you a short answer opportunity.
Yeah,
now.
so I'll give you the short answer. The short answer really and truly is a victim of numbers, I say, right? Because people look at the banks and say the banks are always successful, regardless of whatever the circumstances, and they see a number, and so they say, okay, fine, But why I say the victim of numbers is because Republic Bank, and I'll use Republic Bank Group as an example. Republic Bank has an asset base of in excess of $100 billion. So when you see Republic Bank report a financial performance, and you say Republic Bank makes, and let's just argue for argument's sake, last year Republic Bank made just under $1 billion. Okay, considerably down from what we had made in prior years. But let's use the figure of $1 billion. It was a bit below that, but let's use $1 billion. Republic Bank made $1 billion on assets of $100 billion. That's a 1% return.
Yeah.
It's a big number. When somebody just sees the headlines, and the newspapers are quite good at bringing out the headlines, they say Republic Bank make $1 billion in profits. Nobody sees anything else. Nobody wants to know anything else. But that was made on $100 billion board. That is a 1% return on the assets that you have. If I were to go and tell a business, hey, okay, fine, you have $100,000, and we want you to make $1,000 in profit, that business will say, well, I'm not doing very well.
Yes.
If I make $1,000 and I have $100,000 in assets working for me, but because you have $100 billion and you make $1 billion, somebody will look at the $1 billion and say that you're doing well. So it's a victim of numbers, but we could explore it further. But we report really to many stakeholders. The shareholders are one, but we do recognize that we have a responsibility to our employees, our customers, the society, and so you see activities taking place in all of those areas. And if we have more time, we can get into what some of those activities are.
Okay, so, well, I'll take your offer to come back on the program. We'll have a discussion on some of these issues later. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Baptiste, for making yourself available for the program. And I want to thank you very much for forthright and open conversation this morning. And I want to commend you and the bank and your employees too, because you say you close to 90% vaccinated fully and maybe closer to 100% with at least one vaccination. I want to commend your employees also for taking their citizen responsibility very seriously. Thank you so much for our discussion this morning.
Well, thank you, Bo, and thank your viewers. And I do hope they go out and get vaccinated. And I also want to acknowledge my employees for their commitment to making sure that the country moves forward.
Okay, this is Brighter Morning with Bo. I am Bo Tiwari. We break now for the news with Andrew Chan. This is MCTV, Multicultural TV.